My name is Lindsay Stewart and I'm 32 years old. Last weekend at a family party, a single sentence I whispered to my sister turned the whole night upside down. Within minutes, whispers spread, faces changed, and I realized just how quickly trust can crumble when money's on the table. By the end of the night, I wasn't sure which was louder, the music or the sound of my own heartbeat. Before I tell you what happened and why my phone wouldn't stop ringing the next morning, I want to know what time is it where you are, and which city are you listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And then, someone made a move I'll never forget, one that would change the way I looked at my own family forever. Before that fateful weekend, my life in Albuquerque was as predictable as the New Mexico sunsets, beautiful from afar, but scorching up close. I worked as an elementary school teacher at a local public school, spending my days wrangling second graders through math lessons and recess chaos. My paycheck barely stretched to cover rent on a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood near the Rio Grande, where I'd brew cheap coffee each morning and check my bank app for overdraft alerts. I'd drive my 12-year-old Toyota Corolla to work, praying it wouldn't break down again after the last repair bill wiped out my savings. Family made everything more complicated. My parents, James and Susan Stewart, divorced when I was 12, turning our home into a battleground of custody fights and blame. James, a civil engineer with a steady job, remarried Pamela Hart, a marketing consultant who loved expensive wines and weekend getaways, but never quite embraced me as family. Susan, who managed a small boutique downtown, found stability with Roger Bennett, a real estate agent who guarded his wallet like a fortress. My older brother Thomas, 36, put on a show of success with his tech startup pitches, but he was always calling for loans that turned into gifts. My younger sister Danielle, 28, was the star top of her class, married to Mark Taylor, a surgeon living in a gated community with their kids and a life that looked perfect on social media. The aunts added their own flavor. Aunt Diane Moore, Susan's younger sister, was the genuine one, a retired librarian on a fixed income in a modest condo filled with secondhand books and herbal teas. She battled heart problems but always made time for calls or cards, never asking for anything. On the other side was Aunt Karen Wright, James's older sister, who married into money and never let us forget it, critiquing my career choices at holidays. Her daughter, Emily. My cousin acted friendly during visits, sharing gossip over coffee, but I later discovered she fed every detail back to Aunt Karen like a personal informant. Extended relationships were just as tangled. I'd given Thomas $3,000 last year for what he called a business emergency, only to find out it funded a ski trip he posted online. Danielle borrowed $1,500 for her baby's nursery, swearing she'd pay after her promotion, but 5 months later, silence. James needed $2,000 for home repairs after a storm, and I sent it from my credit card, then saw photos of him and Pamela cruising the Caribbean. Susan hit me up for $500 to cover a boutique shortfall, promising quick repayment that vanished when Roger bought new golf gear. These weren't isolated incidents, they formed a pattern that left me jaded and constantly calculating who might ask next. My best friend, Christina Long, a nurse I met in college, was the one constant. She'd listen over wine at her place, saying things like, "Lindsay, you can't keep being their bank," and help me see I wasn't crazy for feeling used. At work, colleague Brian Kelly had a subtle crush, bringing me lunch or offering to cover playground duty, but I kept it friendly. He was kind, but I wasn't ready for more complications. My small indulgence was lottery tickets bought every Friday at John Adams's corner store near school. John, the owner in his 60s, knew my routine and chatted about weather or local news. Family mocked it. Susan said it was a fool's game. Thomas joked I should just give him the money. James lectured on statistics. I had dreams, though, traveling to the Grand Canyon without worrying about costs, clearing student loans that lingered like shadows, maybe getting a certification to teach higher grades. But at 32, with persistent credit debt from family loans and monthly budgeting down to the penny, those felt like distant mirages. I'd compare prices at grocery stores, skip social invites to save gas, and master the art of smiling through stress, wondering if I'd ever break the cycle. Little did I know, a simple stop at John's store on my birthday would shatter that routine in ways I couldn't imagine. That birthday Friday started like any other bad day at school. A student had a meltdown during reading time, parents emailed complaints about grading, and I spent lunch grading papers instead of eating. Brian Kelly noticed my stress and said, "Lindsay, you look like you need a break. Want to join me for coffee after?" I appreciated the gesture but waved it off, too exhausted to think about his obvious crush. After the bell, I headed straight to John Adams's corner store, my weekly ritual. John greeted me with his usual nod and asked, "Tough week." "The usual tickets." I nodded, handing over $10, but on a whim, I asked for one extra and chose the numbers myself instead of quick pick. John glanced at the numbers I picked: my birth month and day, Susan's birthday, James's, Aunt Diane's, and Christina's, and smiled oddly, saying, "Those look familiar. You know, your grandma used similar ones back in the day. She had stories about family inheritances that got lost in the shuffle." I chuckled, thinking it was just small talk, but his words stuck with me as I drove home. That evening, I treated myself to takeout from a local Mexican spot and opened a bottle of wine Christina had gifted. The lottery drawing aired at 8 p.m., but I barely paid attention at first, scrolling through family photos on my phone, Danielle's perfect kids, Thomas's fake success posts, Aunt Karen's luxury vacation pics. Then the numbers flashed. First matched my birth date, then Susan's, James's, Aunt Diane's, Christina's. My heart skipped as the last one lined up. I froze wine glass halfway to my mouth and checked the ticket against the screen 3 times, hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone. No way, this couldn't be real. The website confirmed it. I was the sole winner of $50 million. After taxes, it'd be around $30 million, a number that made my head spin for someone who'd celebrated a $20 win last year like it was Christmas. Sleep evaded me that night. Instead, I paced the apartment, searching online for stories of lottery winners. What I found terrified me. Families ripped apart by greed, relatives crawling out with sob stories, winners bankrupt and miserable within years. One article described it as the fastest way to lose everything you value. As dawn broke over the Sandia Mountains, I made my choice. I'd claim the prize, but tell no one. Not Susan, not James, not even Christina yet. I needed time to plan, to build protections before anyone could turn me into their personal cash machine. The idea of testing their loyalty started forming then, but first I had to secure the money without a trace. The next morning, after discovering the win, I called in sick to school for the first time in months, citing a migraine that wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding from the overnight whirlwind. I scheduled an appointment with David Cole, a financial attorney specializing in large windfalls and estate planning, whose office was in a sleek downtown Albuquerque building. As I sat in the waiting room, clutching my purse with the ticket inside, dressed in my everyday clothes, I felt like a fraud among the suited clients. David greeted me warmly, a man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, and asked, "What can I do for you today, Lindsay?" I took a deep breath and slid the ticket across his desk, explaining the situation without naming the amount at first. His eyes widened slightly as he verified it. Then he leaned back and nodded professionally. "Congratulations, but I see why you're here quietly. In New Mexico, winners can claim through a trust to keep identities private." Over the next hour, David outlined the process: setting up a blind trust to anonymize the claim, handling federal and state taxes that would reduce it to about $30 million, and building a diversified investment plan with stocks, bonds, and real estate to grow it safely. He warned, "The biggest pitfall is telling family too soon. They'll see you as a resource, not a person. I've seen it destroy relationships overnight." I nodded, relieved my instincts were right, and we discussed immediate steps, wiring funds to secure accounts, avoiding lifestyle changes that could raise suspicions. Leaving his office with a folder of documents, I felt a strange mix of power and isolation. The money was mine, but I couldn't celebrate it. Back home, I continued my routine, driving the old Toyota to the grocery store, complaining about bills in texts with Christina to maintain the facade. That evening, I met Christina for dinner at a casual spot near Old Town, and after some small talk, I shared the partial truth about the win and my growing idea to test the family. "I'm thinking of creating a scenario to see who'd help me if I needed it," I said, watching her reaction. Christina raised an eyebrow, concerned. "Lindsay, that sounds manipulative. Why not just have honest conversations?" I explained the history of one-sided help, how I'd been the giver but doubted reciprocity. She sighed, but understood, saying, "If you're set on this, let's make it believable." We spent the next hour practicing. I'd start with a fake $1 million ticket at the upcoming family party to gauge greed, then follow up by pretending to need $4,000 for medical bills and rent after the loss. Christina helped refine details, mention a sudden company audit at school for realism, even though I was a teacher. I made notes on predictions. Thomas would promise, big, but ghost. Danielle would cite kids' expenses. James would lecture on responsibility, but might slip about the inheritance grandma left that mysteriously vanished. Susan would deflect to others. Aunt Karen would judge. Emily would pretend to help, then report back Pamela, and Roger would outright refuse. As we parted, the party loomed like a storm on the horizon, my nerves buzzing with anticipation of what it might reveal. With the plan solidified and the fake ticket printed to look authentic, I spent the days leading up to the family party organizing details. The gathering was at Aunt Karen's spacious house in the outer suburbs of Albuquerque, a place with a large backyard perfect for barbecues and games, though it always felt more like a stage for showing off than a real reunion. I arrived early to help set up, carrying a dish of homemade enchiladas to blend in my nerves, hidden behind a smile. As guests trickled in the air, filled with the sizzle of burgers on the grill, and kids running around, Danielle's little ones chasing butterflies, while Thomas chatted up Roger about some investment scheme. Pamela and Roger made their entrance, first Pamela in a flashy sundress, commenting on my casual look, as if it were a flaw, and Roger grumbling about traffic from their upscale neighborhood. "Lindsay, you should upgrade that car of yours," Pamela said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded politely, biting back a retort. Soon Dad and Susan arrived together for the kids' sake, Dad shaking hands stiffly with Roger while Mom hugged me briefly, asking about work in that surface-level way. Aunt Karen bustled around, directing everyone, her voice sharp as she critiqued the food setup. Emily hovered nearby, smiling sweetly and offering to help with plates, but I caught her glancing at my phone curiously. The party picked up as Mark and Danielle showed up with their family, Mark clapping Thomas on the back like old pals. Brandon Chen arrived unexpectedly. He'd been viewing my apartment earlier that week as a potential buyer, and Christina had suggested inviting him for a casual network, though I hadn't expected him to come. Brandon, a 32-year-old real estate flipper with an easy charm, started talking to Emily about property values, and she flirted openly, laughing at his jokes, while Mark shot jealous glances from across the yard. Roger even joined in, ribbing Mark about competition, escalating the tension with his own competitive streak. As the sun dipped lower, I pulled Danielle aside near the picnic table, away from the main group. "Hey sis, I have to tell you something huge. I just won a $1 million ticket," I whispered, showing her the fake slip. Her eyes lit up like fireworks and she grabbed it, muttering, "No way, let me see that closer." Before I could react, she slipped it into her pocket and vanished into the house, saying she needed the bathroom. I waited, pretending to mingle, but my stomach twisted as minutes passed. Emily approached, then acting concerned. "You okay? You look distracted." I brushed it off, but later I'd learned she texted Aunt Karen and Pamela right away, spilling what she'd overheard. The party wound down amid awkward goodbyes, with me faking worry about losing the ticket to gauge reactions. Dad patted my shoulder, saying, "If it's gone, it's a lesson in caution," while Mom suggested checking my purse again. Pamela smirked, "Sounds careless," and Roger chuckled, "Better luck next time." Brandon pulled me aside, briefly mentioning, "Hey, when I looked at your place, I saw some old family papers in the attic, stuff about debts from your dad. Thought you should know." His words hit like a punch, confirming suspicions about the hidden inheritance, but I thanked him quietly as he left. Driving home, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, his voice booming with that forced, hearty laugh. "Lindsay heard about your big win from Danielle. If you don't split it with us, say half for the family, I'll just throw it away, for fun." The threat hung there, laced with greed, his jealousy over Emily's flirting with Brandon bubbling under. I smiled into the empty car and hung up, knowing the ticket was worthless paper. But the betrayal stung deeper than expected, especially with Emily's role in spreading the word and Pamela's quick judgment. As the city lights of Albuquerque flickered by, I realized this was just the beginning. Their actions had sealed my resolve to push the test further, uncovering layers of deceit I hadn't fully anticipated. The morning after the party, my phone was a war zone. 30 missed calls, half from Danielle, a few from Mark, even one from Aunt Karen, all before 7 a.m. Voicemails piled up, Danielle's voice frantic. "Lindsay, where's the ticket? Did you find it?" And Mark's smug, "Call me back, we need to talk about that million." I ignored them, my resolve hardening as I sipped coffee in my quiet Albuquerque apartment, the fake ticket drama already exposing their greed. To push the test further, I crafted a new story. The ticket was stolen, leaving me desperate for $4,000 to cover rent and medical bills from a recent health scare. I sent texts to the family, voice trembling in crafted distress, and waited to see who'd step up. First, I called Dad. He picked up on the second ring, his tone already lecturing. "Lindsay, I heard about the ticket mess from Karen. This is why I always said to be careful with valuables." I explained the theft and my need for $4,000, mentioning hospital tests for chest pains. He sighed heavily, slipping into his engineer logic. "You should have had a safety net. I warned you about living paycheck to paycheck." Then, unprompted, he let slip, "Your grandma's inheritance was supposed to be that safety net, but it got complicated." My heart stopped. Brian Kelly had helped me dig into old records after Brandon's attic hint, confirming Dad hid Grandma's $20,000 bequest for his own projects. "Dad? What do you mean complicated?" I pressed, voice sharp. He stammered. "It was for family investments, Lindsay, not personal use," but his defensiveness gave him away. The call ended with him promising to think about helping, but no commitment. Next was Mom. She answered distractedly mid-conversation with Roger. "Oh, Lindsay, Danielle told me about the ticket chaos. That's awful." I laid out the same story, but she cut me off. "Have you asked your dad? Roger and I just sank money into the boutique's expansion." When I mentioned the inheritance, her voice tightened. "What are you implying? That money was handled years ago." But her quick denial and shaky tone betrayed her. She knew about Dad's scheme and covered it. She promised to check with Roger, but suggested I try Thomas instead, passing the buck like always. Thomas was predictable. I texted him the story, and he replied instantly, "Sis, that sucks, I'll see what I can do." But days passed with no follow-up, his usual ghosting tactic after empty promises. I left voicemails, but they went unanswered, just like the $3,000 I'd lent him last year. Aunt Karen was worse. Her call was a lecture. "Lindsay, Emily told me you were careless with that ticket. I always said teaching wasn't stable." When I asked for help, she scoffed. "You should have taken a corporate job like I suggested." Later, I found a text from Emily to Aunt Karen sent during the party, detailing my win and mocking my distress. She'd played the loyal cousin while feeding Karen ammo to judge me. Danielle and Mark were a united front of refusal. Mark texted, "We can't help kids' school fees are killing us." Danielle called later, voice syrupy with fake sympathy. "Lindsay, I'm so sorry about the ticket. Maybe it'll turn up. We're tight with the new house." Their rejection stung, especially after Mark's threat to toss the fake ticket and Danielle's grab and run at the party. Pamela and Roger were blunt in their group text reply. "Sorry, Lindsay, we don't have spare cash for your mistakes. Maybe downsize that apartment." Their dismissal echoed Pamela's snide party comments, and Roger's mention of mistakes felt like a jab at my entire life. As the week unfolded, I jotted their responses in a notebook, each one a fresh cut. Brian, who'd been texting to check on me, offered to dig deeper into Dad's financial records, confirming the inheritance was funneled into a failed business venture with Pamela's input. The family's excuses, deflections, and outright lies piled up, but the real blow was Emily's betrayal. Her texts proved she'd orchestrated the gossip to curry favor with Aunt Karen. As I stared at my phone, notifications still buzzing from Danielle's desperate follow-ups about the lost ticket, I knew the next call would either break me or show me who my real family was. By the end of that week, the sting of my family's responses, or lack thereof, had left me drained, my notebook filled with their excuses and betrayals. I was about to call Aunt Diane Moore, the one person I hadn't reached out to yet, when my phone buzzed with her name. "Lindsay, honey, I just heard from Susan about your trouble with that ticket." She said, her voice warm with worry despite her own struggles. Aunt Diane, a retired librarian living on a meager pension in a small Albuquerque condo, had been battling heart issues for years, yet she was the first to check on me without prompting. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Her concern, so genuine, cracked something in me. I met her the next day at a quiet diner near her place, a spot with worn booths and the smell of fresh coffee. She looked tired, her gray hair tied back, wearing a simple sweater with a mismatched scarf, but her smile was bright as she hugged me tightly. Over pancakes, I spilled the fake story about the stolen ticket and needing $4,000 for rent and medical bills. Without hesitation, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is $2,500, she said, sliding it across the table. "It's most of what I've saved, but it should help with rent. Don't worry about paying it back until you're steady." I stared at the envelope, stunned. She was scraping by her meds, eating up her budget, yet she gave without a second thought. The weight of her kindness hit hard, and I couldn't keep up the lie. "Aunt Diane, I need to tell you the truth," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't lose a ticket. I won $50 million in the lottery last week. The $1 million ticket was fake, a test to see who'd show up for me." Her eyes widened, but she stayed quiet, letting me continue. "I've been burned so many times by family, I had to know who cared. You're the only one who did without even knowing the stakes." Tears welled up as I told her about the party, Danielle's theft, Mark's threat, Emily's gossip to Aunt Karen, and the others' cold refusals. Then Aunt Diane leaned forward, her expression somber. "Lindsay, there's something you should know about your family." She took a deep breath. "Your grandma left an inheritance, $20,000, meant for you and your siblings. James redirected it to a business deal with Pamela, claiming it was for family benefit. Susan knew but kept quiet to avoid conflict with Roger. I tried to speak up, but they shut me out." Her words confirmed what Brian's research and Brandon's attic find had hinted at, and the betrayal cut deeper, knowing it was deliberate. "I never told you because I didn't want to tear the family apart," she added, squeezing my hand. "But you deserve the truth." I hugged her, tears streaming, overwhelmed by her selflessness and the clarity her words brought. "I'm going to help you," I said. "Your medical bill's a better place to live, whatever you need." She shook her head gently, but I insisted, already picturing a small, accessible home near mine and a fund to cover her treatments. As we left the diner, her arm linked with mine, I felt a resolve solidify. The family's lies, Danielle's greed, Emily's duplicity, James and Susan's cover-up had shown me who they were. Aunt Diane was my true family, and I'd cut everyone else out for good, no looking back. The weight of that decision felt heavy but right, like shedding a burden I'd carried too long. A year after that pivotal week, my life in Albuquerque was unrecognizable. I'd moved into a modest but cozy home in a quiet suburb with a small garden, where I'd sip coffee each morning, no longer checking my bank account with dread. The $50 million safely tucked into a blind trust managed by David Cole gave me freedom I'd never known, but it was the clarity from Aunt Diane's honesty that reshaped everything. I'd blocked every family member who'd failed my test: Danielle, Mark, Thomas, James, Susan, Aunt Karen, Emily, Pamela, Roger. No calls, no texts, no exceptions. When Thomas messaged about a new business venture needing $5,000 or Danielle complained about private school fees, I didn't respond. Their silence when I'd needed them echoed louder than their sudden pleas. With David's help, I set up a trust for Aunt Diane, covering her medical bills and buying her a single-story house nearby with wide doorways for her heart-related mobility issues. Her health improved, her smile brighter as she tended a small herb garden. "You didn't have to do this, Lindsay," she'd say during our weekly dinners, but I knew she deserved every bit of it. Inspired by her, I founded a nonprofit focused on supporting low-income teachers and elderly folks living alone, providing grants for bills and home repairs. Christina joined as program coordinator, her nursing skills perfect for outreach, while Brian Kelly volunteered, his crush long faded into friendship. Brandon Chen, who'd tipped me off about the family papers, helped manage the nonprofit's real estate needs, his insights proving invaluable. Even John Adams, the corner store owner, pitched in, sharing stories of his own family's struggles to guide our mission. The nonprofit grew fast, helping over 150 people in its first year, teachers like me, who'd lived paycheck to paycheck, seniors like Aunt Diane, who'd been forgotten by their own. We'd sit on my porch, Christina, Aunt Diane, and I, planning fundraisers over wine, laughing in a way I'd never done with my blood family. The work filled a void I hadn't realized was there, replacing the constant anxiety of pleasing people who never valued me. My old life, scrimping on groceries, dodging family demands, felt like a distant memory. Cutting off my family wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The truth about the inheritance, James funneling Grandma's $20,000 into his failed ventures with Pamela, Susan's complicity to keep peace with Roger, had shattered any lingering hope. Danielle's theft of the fake ticket, Mark's greedy threat, Emily's betrayal through texts to Aunt Karen, and the collective dismissal of my plea for $4,000 showed their priorities. They didn't deserve a place in my new life, and I refused to play their game of half-hearted apologies or fake concern. When James had a car accident and faced repair costs, I didn't step in. When Danielle texted about a family reunion, I left it unread. My peace was worth more than their validation. Looking back, the money didn't change who I was, it revealed who they were. It taught me that family isn't blood. It's the people who show up without expecting a payout. Aunt Diane, with her $2,500 and her painful truth about the inheritance, gave me more than millions could. She showed me love doesn't keep a ledger. I learned to walk away from toxic ties, to build a life on my terms, and to find purpose in helping others who'd been overlooked. If you're listening, ask yourself who's there for you when you have nothing to give. Those are your people. Don't waste energy on those who only see you as a means to an end. Thank you for hearing my story. If it hit home, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below, sharing your own experiences with loyalty tests or family betrayals. I'd love to hear how you've navigated those tough moments and found your true circle.